Meow, meow. Hey everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everyone, Cantonese Cat here. I'm gonna start the intro song, a little bit of a sober tone because a lot of people really have been hurt by this stock this past week. A little bit out of proportion, actually. No, actually, way out of proportion, actually. Both in terms of the fact that they bought into it, and ever since they trade from some of the other stocks that have been lagging behind, they think CleanSpark's been doing very well. They want to chase momentum, and they end up getting hurt from it initially, and then it was followed by one thing after another. There was some concern about insider selling. There's also some concern, not some concern, but a lot of concern. Like this has been really going around X like crazy. There's a lot of concern about dilution. There's also a lot of people who claim there's a lot of broken promises from management, miscommunication from the management. It's just poor. How do you say that? Poor signaling all around. I just want to kind of clear out the air here a little bit. First of all, I do agree with you. I think most people who are in CleanSpark are not trying to stay in it for years. I think most people are trying to trade this stock. Most people are trying to use this as a leverage way to get additional gains for the Bitcoin cycle. If it ends up going up higher, most likely miners are going to make a bunch of money, and they're basically a very, very good leverage play, as you've seen from the last cycle for Bitcoin. So most people get into it already have a trader's mentality. A lot of them may think that, hey, you're only going to stick around for like 12, 18 months at most, and they're going to find a good opportunity to leave. And when you already entered into something like this with a trader's mentality, a lot of times with any kind of negative news coming in, you're going to want to reassess relatively quickly and get out relatively quickly. So there are a lot of people who originally thought they're going to stay in the stock for longer and end up making trades faster than they would, taking a loss. And they try to jump from one miner to another. They try to, really maximize their gain based on the available information, based on the fundamentals, based on the technicals, and they just basically trying to chase momentum, if you will, right? I have a few points I want to make. One thing is that these are stocks. CleanSpark is a Bitcoin mining company. They didn't really start mining Bitcoin really until December 2020. They are a public company not because they want to help you to make money. They are a public company because they want to make money out of you. They are raising capital to do what they have to do. It might be to pay off their management, and it might be to grow their business. Right? This is how the stock market works. They don't really care about whether or not you make money or not. If you happen to make money from it, great. They also want to make money from it too, so if their share prices do excellent, they're also going to be very happy. The CEO having an insider, kind of selling for about 10% of the share just a couple days ago before they announced dilution news is not the greatest look. I have to agree with you, but he's still holding about 90% of the shares. So there's still a 90% incentive for the stock prices to do well. This is not a intention to cash out everything to basically trying to screw the prices of the stock, right? We also don't know a lot of things. We don't know whether or not it was a scheduled sale or not. We don't know whether or not it was because price had gone up from $1.74 all the way up to like $24 just recently this month. And maybe there was some scheduled sale because of that. And it just happened to fall in a couple of days before they announced dilution news. I don't know. It probably isn't. I gotta be completely honest with you, but I can't blame somebody for selling shares when prices have gone from like $1.74 all the way up to like $24. I can't really completely fault somebody for doing that, especially they're only selling about 10% of the shares, and they're still holding about 90%. The That's one thing to consider. This is not anything that is out of the ordinary here. It doesn't mean that the company's going bankrupt. It doesn't mean that the companies, completely want to just tank the stock prices to take advantage of stockholders, because they are still stockholders. The management are still stockholders, and it's not surprising, I guess I should say. The not that it makes it right, but it's not surprising. That's all I should say. The second thing is that there's a lot of questions about whether or not the dilution is it additional $300 million, or is it an additional $800 million. So let's just go with a worst case scenario. Let's go with $800 million dilution. You're talking about maybe around roughly around if you're talking about the market cap of $4.2 billion, which is what we end up closing on Thursday, with market cap at $4.2 billion. So if you do math, 4.2 with 800 additional shares coming in, you're basically talking about diluting the share price by about 20%. Right, 20% is the worst case scenario, assuming that they're diluting the price based on the current stock price. If the current stock price currently is around $21, if you're diluting about 20%, you're talking about dropping it down to maybe around 16.8 to 17. You got some supports down here. Is kind of the price kind of gone a little bit parabolic. Dropping it down to about 16.8 to 17 is still within what is expected based on technicals. I'll get a little bit more about technicals in just a little bit, right? So let's say we're about to enter halving. Post halving, we're really talking about a major fear, uncertainty, and doubt event being out of us. And based on what we're looking at Riot and Mara on the last cycle, post halving is really when miners could potentially start shining. That together with IWM pumping, right? The small cap Russell 2000 stocks pumping. Both of those could potentially happen within the next month or two or three, based on technicals and based on global liquidity, and based on the fact that there's already a scheduled event for Bitcoin halving. Based on how fast blocks are being mined right now, like you can already know that this is happening, right? So let's say if institutions continue to buy, which again I'll show you some data on that too. If institutions continue to buy, and if you end up continue having inflow coming into the stock, let's say a stock price instead of being $21 right now ends up being 30 or 40 over the next 3 months, and if they dilute their stock prices over the next 3 months, with the market cap basically going from, let's say for example, from like $4 billion to like $6 billion, all of a sudden 800 million is not as much. You are basically hindering some of the upside potential for the stock, but it doesn't necessarily mean the stock has to crash down to like $8, $9, or $10 like some people are saying. I don't really understand that logic, to be honest with you. It's on top of that, I mean, institutions are buying. I'm going to show you the data. You can even see from the volume bar here, like there's a lot of buying pressure here. The trend is very, very bullish. There's not really any like exhaustion on the monthly, although there is some sign for exhaustion on the weekly, which I showed you on Tuesday. I was basically showing you guys some signs that there could be a little bit of short-term weakness. I don't care what the news is. There could be some short-term weakness after how parabolic it went up. But dilution news, I think, is a little bit blown out of proportion. You could potentially lose 20, 30, even 35, even 40% of the stock price if things get irrational, assuming that that's where the trend is going, right? So far, the trend is actually still pretty strong. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So the first one is these companies. These are companies. They try to raise capital. That's what they do. Second thing is the dilution news, I think, is a little bit blown out of proportion in terms of people worry about stock prices, whether or not people worry about the company going bankrupt. So that's thing number 1 and 2. Thing number 3 is that all Bitcoin miner companies, matter of fact, all very small cap companies that are trying to grow substantially, in trying to stay on a very, very competitive edge if they are in a very, very competitive field, which are what the Bitcoin miners are in. They need the computing powers. They just there's a lot of competition that they're going through, right? All miner companies dilute. They have to raise capital to improve their business. They have to, you like to ride the Bitcoin cycle going up, but bottom line, this is still a business. Why are they leveraged for Bitcoin? It's because they're constantly trying to improve the infrastructure, to trying to be providing the appropriate infrastructure to be the top dog, or if you will, for this particular business, for this particular sector. So they are trying to rapidly grow their business. In order to do that, they have to buy new miners. They have to keep doing what they have to do to improve their business, even if it's short term. Even if you're in it for a short term, maybe in it for the next 12 months or so, if you're using it as a leverage play, it's actually not a bad thing for them to want to dilute shares to use that capital somewhere good, right? If they want to buy more miners to be in a very, very good position post halving, if Bitcoin ends up going to 6 digits, miners are going to make a ton of money. And the more computing power, the more hash rates you have, the better off you're going to be, right? And the stronger your leverage is going to have as a Bitcoin related company, as a Bitcoin miner. So that's a third thing. So again, I already went through 3 things. One is that's what companies do. Second is dilution news is it sounds bad, it is bad, but it's not as bad as some people would imagine for the price to all the way like feel the gaps down like the $9 or $10 range. I don't really see that necessarily. The third thing is that all companies within the sector, they all dilute. I think the fourth thing actually goes into as to how disillusioned people can be in the short term. There is a lot of disillusionment in terms of the Bitcoin miners in general. I mean, like, basically, everybody's put money in it has been hit by dilution news one after another. Mara diluted, Bitfarms diluted, and everybody look at how strong CleanSpark has been. And then there has been supposedly some management basically promising you that we're done with dilution, or this is well, I mean, they're a growing company. Anyway, so I think there were a lot of people that are disillusioned. They try and go from one place to another, and now there are even doubts about people even wanting to stay Bitcoin miners or not at all. All of these feelings are valid. All of these feelings are completely valid. So first of all, I'm a married man, cat, that speaks like a man. I learned how to speak like a man, but I'm really a cat. I'm a married man cat. I understand these feelings. I'm not going to invalidate your feelings. You can feel very disillusioned, and there's nothing wrong with feeling disillusioned because it is a very easily disillusioned space when you are expecting something and when you're not getting it. Not right away anyway, not over the last few months anyway. But again, I'm not here to invalidate your feelings, but yes, they dilute. But when things run, dilution probably doesn't matter when you have a bull market irrationality going. That's what happens a lot of times with small cap stocks. There is a lot of dilution, there's a lot of things that people might question, but for whatever reason, when the true bull market comes, when irrationality comes, these things go away. I think we're at the beginning stage of having global liquidity being pulled into the system here. And you look at Dogecoin. Like, I just want to give you an example here. Look at Dogecoin. If you're talking about dilution, you know what constantly dilutes Dogecoin. The Dogecoin market cap has gone up by about, since the last cycle bottom to currently, Dogecoin has gone up about 300% in their market cap. But the price of Dogecoin has only gone up by about 250%. So there's actually a 20% dilution there in Dogecoin just over the last year. Does that stop you from being in Dogecoin based on looking at the technicals, based on the current breakouts that it has, and based on the fact that it might be building up a very bullish trend here, breaking a lot of capital, breaking a lot of resistance potentially. It's building up a very strong case for it to run up a lot higher. I don't think people care about that. I don't think people think about that. During the bear market, over the course of last year, actually probably like a year and a half, when I was accumulating, Dogecoin very slowly, and when I was posting about it, there are people saying, "Oh no, it's not a good coin because they dilute." I'm like, "Yeah, I know they dilute, but the technicals are basically supporting that. This looks exactly just like the last cycle, and they diluted Dogecoin like crazy last cycle too. It didn't stop it from going parabolic. And Dogecoin right now has, just to give you a little bit of matter perspective, Dogecoin right now has about $30 billion of market cap. CleanSpark has $4.2 billion of market cap. If you have more capital being poured into CleanSpark, and there's more of available capital, actually, I would argue, that are able to pour it into CleanSpark than Dogecoin. The reason why is because institutions and big funds, they still have a hard time pouring capital into Dogecoin. There's no Dogecoin ETF, but they can buy into CleanSpark. They can get the exposure of the crypto market. And right now, the market cap of CleanSpark is still tiny. It's like it's only like $4.2 billion. I don't really know what the fascination is with the doomers. Not to say that price won't go down further. I mean, like, okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that, but I just don't want to. I guess I just don't understand why people are so absolute about things. They say that because of this, price is going to drop down for sure. Price is going to go down like 30, 40, 50% or more because of news like this. Because Mara did this, CleanSpark is going to do that. I don't know. And if it does, it might still be okay, and I can show you why. The fifth point I'm trying to make is that institutions are buying. They've been buying heavy, so there's a lot of buying pressure coming in. Looking at the institutional fund here based on Black Cat, huge, parabolic. This data over here on the monthly chart is also confirmed if you go on a website called fintel.io. It's also confirmed. There's huge institutional buying. One of the big buyers is BlackRock. So BlackRock can buy Dogecoin, but they can buy CleanSpark. So there's a lot of huge institutions that are buying in right now. Currently, institution ownership is over 40%. If they end up diluting, I think there's a good chance the institution. Now, price can still go down after dilution. I do not question that. Right? That's just physics. If you dilute something, your price is going to go down. But I think over the course of the next couple months or so, it's just been showing such a strong buying pressure that I think most likely, based on the trend, is going to continue. And I think they're still in a relatively well-positioned space when it comes to institution interest. Now, after going through all that, those are all just perspective, right? Let's go through the technicals. I already spent about 20 minutes talking about the perspective just because there's so much stuff out there. Okay. Technicals, it's not really showing you that anything that's completely unexpected. A lot of times when you go through, kind of parabolic, so this is the Ichimoku cloud. This is a monthly chart. With the Ichimoku cloud, you get a few things along with it. First is you get these couple lines right here. You get the red line right here, which is the Tenkan. You get the blue line right here, which is the Kijin. Tenkan and Kijin can also serve as resistance and support lines. And with these kind of lines right here, you're able to calculate the Ichimoku cloud, which can either be above price or below price. And the cloud can also serve as resistance or support. So what you're seeing here is that the Tenkan and Kijun had a very, very bullish cross just a couple months ago, back in January. And then since then, it's just been pushing price up. And the Tenkan has spent about a year or so trying to flip it away from being resistance to support. And eventually, so far, we're using it as a support. Matter of fact, I think that this past month I've got pretty close to retesting the Tenkan, but it just, never really quite did that. Instead, it ended up closing inside the Ichimoku cloud, which generally is a pretty favorable longer term thing to happen to the stock. Now the price has gone inside the Ichimoku cloud, there are a couple of things that it can do. Again, the bottom of the Ichimoku cloud over here, which currently is at 18.16, 18.16, I should say. Once price entered cloud, there's something that it can do. It can just kind of go sideways and do whatever it wants to do. Eventually, it could do one of two things. One is it could just go back and back test the bottom of the cloud before going up higher. It can even wick below that and potentially even wick down to back test the Tenkan and Kijun down here, or back test any of these volume shells over here. There's some very, very strong volume shells right underneath of this price right here that it can go from 21 and 21.2. They can go down to any of these levels as potential support levels and try to see whether or not it finds support and bounce up. Now, if it doesn't find support, there's still a lot more levels down below, right? You're talking about a lot of support underneath below right here. And there's always a potential once price get a little bit too far from the Tenkan on the monthly that it could do a little bit of back test, use Tenkan to push the price up a lot higher as the Tenkan continues to go up. Right now, Tenkan is a very, very much of an upsloping line right here. So currently, and it's just at bullish cross with Kijun. So currently, over the next 12 months or so, I don't care which path it takes, maybe down first and up, maybe just sideways and up. But overall, the trend is up, and I expect it to go up. If it goes down, it could just be making a higher low. If you look at the monthly here, the higher low would be all the way down to $8. If it goes back down real far, technically it can still be a higher low as long as it's about $8. So I don't know, you can still have a bull trend, although I don't know when it's go down that far because you have a lot of support over here. And once you have a bullish cross over here, generally price use, the Tenkan and Kijun to push price a lot higher. I also don't know when it's going to go back down to like 13, 14, to be completely honest with you. I do not know. When I was looking at this, I was looking at the price here. Yeah, the 23, 24 range seems to be pretty strong resistance up here. As I was mentioning on a video about on Tuesday, right? The resistance was also found here on the last cycle. As Tenkan rolled over, it back tested, it got rejected, and it probably just dropped significantly as a result, right? It tried to back test it maybe a little bit here, got a little bit close, but didn't really quite get there. And it just kind of went way down because of that. Now, the price had already flipped the Tenkan and Kijun from resistance to support. So most likely what you're going to having is that these lines are going to continue to push as a support. Eventually is able to push the price above the Ichimoku cloud to go up higher. But it could back test it. And when it back tests it, because the price is at 21.2, it back tests it all the way down to 13 or 14. It can be extremely brutal for a lot of people who are not prepared for it. These are Bitcoin miners that can go down 10, 20, 30% a day. And if it goes plus or minus 10, 15% a day, that's like normal volatility for these stocks. Especially when you have dilution news, I can totally see it can go down like 20% in a day. Like, that's not a question for me. And once that happens, you do have some more, bearish momentum in the short term that can potentially drag it down to like, talking about like, this is from 21 to 14, 13, talking about like 40% drop. I'm not necessarily going to be surprised by that because price was just at like, 6.5 or $8 just 2 months ago. So I wouldn't be surprised by that if it ends up doing that, right? But it could. And if it does, you have to decide for yourself whether or not to follow the longer term trend or whether or not to get scared by the shorter term trend. Or if you're smart enough to trade the short term trend, then good for you. You do what you have to do to make the best gain that you have, both in terms of your financials and your mental health. Whatever helps you, right? But I can see it potentially finding some of these, pretty strong support. It doesn't have to go all the way down to 13, 14. With the institutional buying, with the fact that the dilution technically is around 20%. It's also not happening right now. It's just a planned dilution. So there's a potential that it could backtest the Ichimoku Cloud at the bottom right here, which is 18.16. You could backtest any of these volume shelf levels down here, around 17.2. 16.1, 15.2, 13.4. These are all very, very important volume shelf levels are right around here that could all potentially serve as support. There is a pretty strong support level around 13, 14 at the Tenkan and Kijun, not just because it's at the Tenkan and Kijun, but because there's also a lot of price history here, as you can see, around 13, 14. There's a lot of price history over here as well, so there's a good chance you're going to get some pretty good potential support underneath here if price goes back down that far. But it depends on the institutional buying pressure. It depends on what Bitcoin does. It depends on what IWM does. It depends on a lot of factors, right? I do want to give it a benefit of the doubt because price did close this month inside Ichimoku Cloud. That is generally still a relatively bullish indicator for longer term. I'm not talking about short term like next week or the week after or the week after. I'm talking about longer term, and that's the whole point of showing you a monthly chart, because I care more about the long term, care about what happens over the next year, not what happens over next week. And that's something to consider. Now, I just kind of beat this monthly chart down to the ground to, kind of already discuss a lot of the Ichimoku Cloud. I also want to show you the Bollinger Bands. Price is, as you remember back when I was just showing you, price was kind of way above the Tenkan. Price was at 21.2 when Tenkan was only around 14. Guess what price is also a little bit far away from? It's a little bit far away from the upper Bollinger Band. It's been pulling up a Bollinger Band and causing a huge expansion of the upper Bollinger Band. The 20-month moving average has also been rolling up exponentially higher. But because price closed above the upper Bollinger Band, and the upper Bollinger Band right now is at 15.6 right here. So price is still a little bit far. Now granted, next month it's going to push up higher. Who knows how high it's going to be, maybe like 17, 18, somewhere up here. The Bollinger Band is going to, I expect, to continue to expand. I expect next month probably going to end up closing inside the upper Bollinger Band. It's not surprising that when price goes way above the upper Bollinger Band for the price to kind of go sideways or even wick down a little bit before bullish continuation. That's just a matter of perspective. And if you think that that's the case, and if you think that I'm wrong, then, first to say that, hey, your price is going to drop 30, 40%. But you've been telling me all along that this is a bullish stock. I'm still bullish on it. I'm still looking at all these monthly technicals. I'm still, feeling pretty bullish on it, actually. But you have to consider the fact that stocks or any assets follow gravity on the way up. They can just go up continuously higher. If it ends up having a big giant green candle like that, you're going to have some corrections. So, and when it comes to corrections, when price just can kind of go for from $3, $4 all the way up to $25 in just a few months, the correction can be pretty brutal, especially when it's way outside upper Bollinger Band here. It could end up going sideways. It could still end up going up higher and just have a little bit of a wick underneath to 17 or 16. It may not necessarily have to go down to 13 or 14 or even lower. Maybe potentially wick down to 17, 16, 15, and then bounce back up because it looks like price wants to continue to ride up the upper Bollinger Band and keep going up. The volume certainly is telling that story too. It seems like you have a pretty strong bull trend that's going right now. There's no signs of exhaustion right here. You know why else I say there's no sign for exhaustion? Yeah, you just look at the monthly RSI. You look for any kind of, bearish divergence. There isn't any. It's just bull. There's no like bearish divergence on the monthly chart. Now there is a little bit on the weekly chart. I'll show that a little bit, but on the monthly there isn't any. So technically monthly still looks pretty good. Technically monthly can still go on for another year. Technically, if it goes down to like 13 or 14, if it ends up doing that or even lower, it's probably still a bleep on the radar. I anyway, it all depends on your meta perspective. Again, I'm not here to invalidate feelings because I'm a married cat, and I know that stuff pretty well. I don't always behave the best, but I know it, right? And that's half the battle, guys. And for those rare women who are listening to me, just smile and nod. Anyway, I'm gonna go to the weekly chart here. It's been up 30 minutes. I'm not gonna waste any more time. Looking at the weekly chart, first off the bat, I was kind of showing a little bit about the bearish divergence here when price went up, and you end up having a RSI that is going down. Initially, I was thinking, yeah, there's got a little bit of bearish divergence here, but there's potential for price to kind of push up a little bit to here and maybe got rejected. I can't imagine how bullish it would get if it ended up breaking up, but you can't never get too bullish right at resistance. Price didn't end up hitting that area, and it just ended up keep dropping. But again, there has been a bearish divergence that's been building up for the last couple of months now, and it does look a little bit exhausted up here if you look at the last couple of months. So can it be, is it reasonable for you to expect the price kind of going back down and test some of these lower levels? This big volume shelf down here around 17, around 16, or even maybe around 15. It's been doing that for weeks number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, it's been finding support over here. Could it have like a final test over here at this level before going up, cooling down some of these indicators before going up further? Can it go down all the way down to like 13 or something like that? Because there's already a lot of support here that's been tested. Could it go down a little bit to find a spring to backtest this level over here before going up? Certainly possible. You know what I'm going to do when the price gets down to 13? I'm going to buy. So you can also see the volume over here has kind of been a little bit exhausted too as it goes up. So I can't imagine the price not going down anyway, even before the dilution news. And you can also see that you already have a little bit of like an inverted hammer candle over here, which is a bearish top. So can I see it going down to some of these lower levels, test it and going up? Sure I can, right? But do I see this being a bull trend? Yes, I do. You have another support here around 13. I'm probably going to be pushed up higher over the next week or two. It's probably going to go up to like 14. Can it go down a little bit further and wick down before going up? Or even close down here but like for like a week or two before going up? Sure, but the bull market support band is very positive trending. This is very positive trending. When it's very positive trending like that, there's a reason why the bull market support band is called the bull market support band. It's because it supports price during a bull market. It's a band that supports price during a bull market. What happens during a bear market? It can serve as resistance, right? Negative slope. I don't care if price push up for like 1 or 2 weeks. I'm going to push the price back down. I don't care if you're trying to wake up about. I'm going to push it back down. I don't care if you're trying to get close to it. I'm going to push it back down. Over here, okay, we're flattening, rejected, flattening. Okay, it's flat enough. Let's push through. And guess what this band has been serving? Over here, it didn't serve as very good support. Again, it went sideways. But over here, you can see how positive slope the bull market support band is. It's going to keep pushing price up higher, most likely, because this is objectively a bull market. You know how else I know it's a bull market? Besides showing you the monthly charts that 20-month moving average is pointing up, besides showing you the monthly chart that there's a Tenkan Kitchen cross, besides showing you that the bull market support band is pushing up, that it's going to push the price up a lot higher, there's also a 20 over 50 over 100 weekly bull trend. This is a weekly bull trend that's very, very powerful. You just had a couple of bullish crosses that happened, the 50 cross above the 100 here back in January. The you're talking about the 20 really crossed about the 50 back in June of last year. So there's been a pretty strong bull trend that's been brewing. I think it probably just got a little bit overextended and it looks a little bit exhausted. It might simply just be waiting for the bearish support band to push the price up higher. And that's okay. That's a normal part of market. It's okay. Now, can I be wrong? Sure, I can be wrong. Can price plummet all the way to $10 to $5 down here to $4? Sure, it can. Would I be wrong then? Yeah. Is there anything in the technical to suggest that to be the case? No. Does it mean that this like 20% dilution of the stock based on current price, is that going to do that? I don't think so. Is the institutional buying suggesting that it's going to do that? No. Is the volume going up like crazy over the last year or so going to suggest that something like that is going to happen? No. Right? Is this the blow off top that you're seeing and where everybody is just trying to sell? And we should be worried about it. I mean, there's always that possibility, but I don't think so. Okay, I mean, I still think that we're early. I mean, I still think that we're just starting to see a very very nice bull trend, and when things are just pointing up like that, you you're basically betting against some pretty bad odds if you think the price is going to go down a lot further and not finding support in these very critical volume shelves down here with these very critical moving averages on the weekly. Most likely you're going to find support in one of these places. Now, in addition to looking at these moving averages, I'm also going to put the Ichimoku cloud. It's way above the cloud. Guess what happened over the last few weeks? The Tenkan has been rolling up as support. And you can see that for the last 4 weeks, three of these weeks have perfectly backtested Tenkan and found support there and price bounce as a result. Can price back down and backtest the Tenkan again? Sure. Can it fail and drop down to the Kijun? Sure. I think by next week, Kijun will probably end up raising higher too, so it might be around 14 or so. Tenkan's probably going to rise up a little higher too, so it could be potentially around 17 or so. The bottom of the monthly Ichimoku cloud is around 18.16. There's a lot of support underneath. If it breaks through all this support, can it just be a little bit of a wick before we find buyers and it goes back up? Would that wick potentially be a good buying opportunity? I think so. But you're having a lot of these kind of positive pointing weekly supports here. I think that even if price drop below them, they're not going to serve as some very strong resistance or anything like that. I think you're going to have a good chance over the next month or 2 or 3 to really push back above. Again, it's not the end of the world to consider backtesting this breakout over here at this level. It's not the end of the world, and this is still technically a very, very bullish thing if it ends up happening. It just needs to find a higher low. I don't know how high the higher low is going to be. I don't know how low the higher low is going to be. It just needs to find a higher low before bullish continuation. Right now I see a lot of support levels down below. This is a 40-minute video. I normally don't do this, but I have a lot to say. And what I have to say is not the truth. What I have to say is not what necessarily has to happen. What I have to say is more think about probabilities based on what I see and more about the logic that I have. Again, it doesn't matter, it's the stock market. It can do whatever it wants to do. It doesn't matter what my logic is, it doesn't matter what my thoughts are. I do not control the stock market. I don't have any insider information. I don't manipulate the stock because I don't have any power. I'm just a cat. I'm just a cat who happens to know how to buy, how to press the buy button, and getting ready in terms of mental processes of where I want to push the sell button. I don't have any inside information. I'm not any religious figures. I don't have any power over the market. I'm just telling you what I think. There are too many people out there and too many cats out there. They're telling you what they're thinking, and all these thoughts are these absolute thoughts that doesn't necessarily follow logic. All these thoughts, it's okay if you have a hypothesis, have a thesis, and if you have some logic to back behind it, completely fine. But if you're going to say that this is what's going to happen, when it doesn't make sense, Mrs. Cat's going to get angry. Okay? Because if you know anything about marriage, you have to make sense to the person or the cat that you're with before you say anything. I guess the power of X or power of social media is that you can just say whatever you want, however you want, and to see if it sticks or not, right? You can do that, but just don't be absolute about it. Be open minded. I don't care one way or another if it doesn't drop down to like 18, if it just keeps going up, if institution like laughs at the dilution, just keeps buying, just continue to like, they don't, if it doesn't care about this bearish divergence, if it doesn't care about this toppy candle, it just keeps going up, I'm okay too, right? Have you considered that possibility? I don't find it to be very likely. I find it to be far more likely for the price to drop over the next couple of weeks. I was basically showing you a lot of the support levels over on the charts over the last, couple of weeks too. But yeah, you do you. You think about what time frame you want to trade. You think about what you want to do. Are you a trader? Are you an investor? You make your decision. You stick with your plan. If you see certain things that don't look right, you exit. That's fine. As long as you have a plan. I don't care if you're a bear or a bull. I really don't care. Like whatever you want to do. Thank you for listening. It's been over 40 minutes. Bye.